Now we're going to hear from Arch Brown.
Hi there. President John Paul Schaefer, PhD. That's what I'm going to talk about briefly this morning, this afternoon actually. In 1971, at age 36, John became the 15th president of the University of Arizona. He had most recently been the dean of the College of Liberal Arts and had taught chemistry at the U of A since 1960. He alone had the vision to make U of A the great research university it is today. Under his watch, the multiple mirror telescope was approved, as was the new main library building. Look at what has become of these projects. Everyone knows about the telescopes. Everyone will know about the huge advances in interactive education being developed today at the libraries. John had a long-term vision for U of A, and it happened to be accurate. Photography was and is one of John's immense talents. His friendship with Ansel Adams was formed by their mutual passion of this art form. Never lacking in guts, he asked Adams for his archives and was told yes under the conditions that led to our current marvelous Center for Creative Photography. Today, we are entrusted with the works and archives of over 2,000 photographers. Quite a milestone. I have worked with John primarily at the Desert Museum, but also with the university libraries. He transformed the investment policy of the Desert Museum through his questioning and prodding the Board of Trustees. Complacency is not one of John's vices. John is one of my heroes, and I'm honored to be here today. Congratulations, John. And congratulations.
Thank you, Arch. I'm back. Okay. This is the bishop's cap. Is that correct, John? Bishop's cap? No. Are you going to correct me? What's the title? It's a platinum print of a cactus that I thought was the bishop's cap cactus. Okay. Well, John is not only a passionate photographer, but a passionate educator. I'm going to show you some of John's images. The first group of them are going to be platinum prints. And the other images you'll recognize are made by me on my cell phone usually. So the passionate educator, this is John in my classroom that for some reason, even when he was working full-time at Research Corporation, he came into my class at least once a semester for over 25 years. That's a lot of dedication. And he's holding a negative of Ansel Adams. So this is a platinum print that he made from that negative that he's sharing with my students. And here he is sharing prints in the classroom. So one of the reasons that I like to have John come into the class is because we work very differently. Here's John pleading with the students, begging them to make good negatives. I know what he's saying here. is you can't have a good print if you don't have a good negative. So John and I work very differently. We're different practitioners. John likes to stay within the lines, and I really like to go outside of the lines. And this is certainly true in the way that we prepare alt process prints. And I like to use a brush, and John likes to use what's called a puddle pusher, which is a glass rod that has a small piece of glass or plexiglass attached to it. And you use that rod to pull the chemical over the piece of paper, and you get a very nice clean line. But you have to learn how to use it. And we had a couple of these at Pima College, but one time John decided that he wanted every student to have a puddle pusher because when he did the demo the next day, he didn't want them to be using brushes. And he said, I'm going to make everyone a puddle pusher. And he went and he got the lab glass, and he had the little pieces of plexiglass cut, and he got some glue. And the night before he was going to come to class, the telephone rang, and John said, Helen had to dial the phone. I've glued my fingers together and all the pieces of glass. He said, do not ever mention this to me or anyone else again. Well, I waited a couple decades. So for the first 10 years or so, my alt process room at Pima College was so small that I really couldn't invite John and the class into it. And Diane Nielsen was kind enough to let us use her darkroom on the 3rd floor of the center. And so John and I would meet once a semester, and I would come in and we'd prepare things, and then the students would come in. And I would often have John do the platinum, or it turned into palladium years later when we couldn't afford the platinum. But he would do that demo. And so we would coat the paper and on the 3rd floor, and then we'd take the elevator down and we'd go outside and make the exposure out in the front. And after a few years of doing that, John got tired of that, and he said, you know, the roof is just one flight up. Let's just go up to the roof. He goes, why don't you go get a key? So somehow a key appeared, and there was a key. And then one day at the end, that door on the roof closed behind us, but there was no place to put a key on the other side of the door, and this was before cell phones. And so my entire class and John Schaefer we were all locked up on the roof of this building, and I went to the edge and looked over, and one of my students came with me, and he said, oh, I know that person down there. And I said, well, you need to yell at that person right now and tell them to go into the front desk, and they need to get in touch with, I'm not going to say the name, and let that person know that we're up on the roof. That was the last time we were ever up on that roof. Oh, this is the last one. So this is Lacock Abbey. This is a beautiful print that John made after he went to Lacock Abbey in England, which is the home of William Henry Fox Talbot, who invented the saltpaper process, a man that many of us in this room pray to, and some of us have made the pilgrimage to his house. But when I look at this image, I think of John's excitement about photographic education and his generosity of spirit, because he was kind enough to bring in Michael and Barbara Gray, who were the preeminent salt paper printers in the world, and he brought them to Tucson to do a workshop for my all-process class. And so on the day of the class, and Barbara and Michael Gray from England. Michael's the curator of the William Henry Fox Talbot Museum. This is a big deal. And I'm upstairs on the 3rd floor with them, and it's a couple hours before class, and we're preparing the demo. Now, John is out of town. He's not even here, but he's set it all up very nicely, and he doesn't know this story. And so Barbara's ready for the formula, and when she asked me for the ammonia, I gave her my bottle of ammonia from Safeway, which is what I'd always used. And she looked at me aghast, and she said, well, I need a 28% ammonia solution. Well, I didn't even know what that was, because as John knows, I've never had a chemistry class, but I did hide that from him for a good 20 years or so. Well, she said she needed this solution, and I didn't know what to do, and I had 18 students coming in an hour. There was a phone on the darkroom wall of Diane's darkroom, and so, John, this is the kind of thing that when you hang out with John, sometimes you have to do this. I called the chemistry department, and I asked for the lab facilitator, and I said, I'm calling for John Schaefer, and I need a 1/4 cup of 28% ammonia at the photography 3rd floor of the center. And a half hour later, a man appeared with a glass measuring cup like my mother used, and he goes, is this what you want? And I said, yes, thank you. And I gave it to Barbara and Michael. Oh, okay. So this was our Lacock Abbey at Pima College. And here's John making an exposure. Many different outfits I have. Well, I called this the grandfather cactus. I don't know if I'm right or not. Another beautiful platinum print. And the casual John at the front of Pima College. So truly, John is a really wonderful photographer. These are all platinum prints. And this is John with Ansel's work in print viewing. And here he's preaching to the choir. I believe that John's real love is silver printing. He's back doing that right now. And I believe that he is currently using a print washer that I got from Keith Schreiber that's now came out of Keith's darkroom to my darkroom to John's darkroom. So through all these years, John has remained engaged not only as an educator, but also as a photographer. And in some of the earlier work that he did, one of his great loves, I believe, at Sanavir, we have the lovely Laura Gilpin and Father Kieran McCarthy. The door handle at the mission. And Ansel in silver. John has also done quite a bit of color work and continues to work today. And this image he took last month in Yosemite. We look forward to see what's coming next. Okay, I have a two-handed.
I'm often asked what I'm most proud of having accomplished in my 11 years as president of the University of Arizona. One I always include is the Center for Creative Photography.
John really made this university what it is today. And the Center of Creative Photography is another indication of his genius. I think that universities these days spend most of their time trying to figure out how to differentiate themselves from others. And the Center of Creative Photography is a jewel that makes this university unique. I cannot imagine many people that would be able to go and convince Ansel Adams to put his collection here. And I think part of it was not only the genius of John, but the fact that he's a photographer. So there must have been some amazing conversations about technique that I can envision sparked the imagination of Mr. Adams.
When Ansel passed away, I moved to New York and was working there for about 7 or 8 years, but I decided to relocate to Arizona, and I thought, if I wanted to leave New York, where could I go in the field that would be similar to this amazing experience that we had in Carmel, where Ansel was a magnet, and everyone from so many different creative fields came to see him, and there was no question in my mind that it was Tucson. Coming to Tucson with our fabulous photography community here, it is the magnet that brings people from all over the world to come to see work, to study, to research, and to be inspired by it, all that is at the center.
The Schaefers in general, both Mrs. Schaefer and Dr. Schaefer, have such a wonderful impact. They've had such a wonderful impact on the center, or on the university. One perfect example is the center, and then also the center's welcomingness to somebody like me. I just feel incredibly fortunate that I live in a place that also has the Center for Creative Photography. It's just been a wonderful experience.
This university would not be what it is today, and that is not overblowing it, if it hadn't been for his genius when he was president.
So I'm so grateful for all that John persevered to have for us here in Tucson. We're so lucky to be able to experience it here. And John, thank you so much for all that you did for the field of photography, for all of us as professionals in it, and for the greater love of photography at large.
John, thank you so much for all you've done for the university, what you've done for the community, what you continue doing for the community through your love of the arts and your understanding of the sciences. Thank you, John. So John, personally, I also thank you for the tie I'm wearing. Everybody may recognize it's the periodic table. I don't have too many ties for those that know me, and I was in a party with John, and I loved this tie, and he took it off and gave it to me. So there you go, John, thank you.
That's so wonderful. That's perfect. That is perfect.
John.
So how do you follow that? Goodness gracious. So I've had the opportunity to come back to U of A about 4 years ago. And so, my job is to advance research at the university writ large. You start with astronomy and astrophysics and go all around the disciplines, all the way back to the wonderful art we have here. And I come here brand new, and you're trying to grapple your head around all the 2,500 faculty we have. And to a T, everyone says, who do you talk to? You talk to Dr. Schaefer. So Dr. Schaefer, of course, is a chemist. And so he's imbued with the ability to use fewer words to describe things than many of us mere mortals are able to do. So you call up John, and I'm a little nervous because I don't know a lot of people who were presidents of universities at age 37. I think I was still in my postdoc when I was 37. So I call up John, and every conversation to a T starts with, well, Kimberly, let me tell you what you need to do. Right? And what follows are incredible insights, wise guidance, and a continued commitment to excellence. Now, one of the things I will say, too, is that John is truly unique, and that was the first, I would say, advocate for interdisciplinary scholarship. What's different about that is it's all inculcated in one person. Nowadays, we require teams to do the excellent work that comes about by bringing disciplines together and having wonderful things. So I am so pleased to give the award, the CCP Portraits Award, to Dr. John Schaefer.
Thank you very much. We've been here for quite some time. The good thing about having an 83-year-old man on the program last after a long coffee hour is that you know he ain't going to speak very long. It's always nice to get recognition. I have to share with you a story. A fragment of the university that I've been very active in for a number of years just acquired a new administrator, and I got a call a couple of weeks ago saying, this person would like to meet you for lunch. And so this staff set up the luncheon. We're going to meet this past Monday at the Arizona Inn at 11:30. I got there about 11:25, sat down. About 5 minutes later, a distinguished man, well, I shouldn't have said man, but and came in, started wandering around, looking around. And after 5 minutes, I said, are you waiting for someone? And he looked at me and says, yeah, but not you, fella. So I said, well, who are you looking for? And he said, John Schaefer. I said, that's me. So, how quickly did I forget? I want to say a couple things about the center and the university. Now, I grew up in the East and spent some time in the Midwest, and homes in those parts of the country had attics. And attics were wonderful places, especially for kids, because there was stuffed with things that were important to the family, not enough room really to keep them all on display, things that you didn't want to get rid of, things that you needed to keep track of, part of your life, part of your history. In a real sense, universities are big attics. They have libraries which are stuffed with books. They have museums with paintings of all kinds. They have music halls that are filled with recitals and productions, theater. The thing about libraries and music halls and the things they produce, they're the voices of people who had something important to say, something important that should be shared with other people. Photographers use the language of photographs to express their concerns, their reactions, their interactions with the world. Painters use canvas to express their views. Composers write symphonies, songs, chamber music, whatever it may be, and on and on. Now, a symphony that never gets heard may as well not have been written. Books that don't get read are just taking up space. The only way these things really become valuable is if they're shared with the public. And that's a job of the university. The Center for Creative Photography has the world's greatest collection of 20th century photography around. And it's our responsibility to make sure that the voices of these photographers who made the Center for Creative Photography what it is today get heard. And the way to do that is A, to invite them to become part of the center to see what's here. But even a more important way of doing that is through a publications program. If you can publish the works and intelligently explain what these things are all about, why they're important, why they change our history, why they record our history, I think you've really accomplished something. And that's an ongoing obligation that I feel toward the center, and I hope that you feel as well. It's important in this day and age where resources for higher education or education at any level are very limited, that we as individuals who can make contributions on a personal level do so. We talked about a publication program, and I was told by Denise earlier on that a very generous individual, and I don't know who that is, has pledged a $5,000 matching gift program to individuals who will contribute to the publications program at the University of Arizona Center for Creative Photography. And I'm going to ask you to think about making a gift today. This is not a fundraiser, but I'm going to ask you to make a gift to the center sometime in the future to help out this wonderful publications program so that we can share what is really an incredible gem of Tucson, Arizona, the University of Arizona, with the world at large. So it's now time to go to the men's room, and I want to thank you for coming and thank you for this recognition. I much appreciate it.
But first, a moment with Becky. And there is a sweet treat for you outside.
There is also an envelope taped to the desk of your seat that you can use for making the donation that Dr. Schaefer has encouraged you to consider. It's been an incredibly inspiring program, and I want to thank you all for joining us. We'll have a second portraits program this time next year, so I hope we'll see you back again. So again, don't forget your envelope. As Dr. Schaefer said, there's a $5,000 match on the table for money that we're able to raise for the publications program. And we have students with baskets who will collect your envelope. You can make a donation with a check or with a credit card number, so that information is in here. And then we'd like to invite you to join us for a dessert reception, and you can mingle with our speakers and our honorees. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. No donation is too small.